After the New York Knicks suffered back-to-back postseason losses to the Indiana Pacers, the Knicks organization decided to move in a different direction by letting go of former longtime head coach Tom Thibodeau, a coach who was not only a coach of the year for the Knicks organization just a couple of seasons ago, but the same coach that took this team to the Eastern Conference Finals, something that this organization has not seen in over 25 years. And they decided to bring in former Sacramento Kings head coach, Golden State Warriors assistant, and of course, longtime Cavaliers head coach Mike Brown to now run the show for the Knicks organization and to hopefully make a championship push with this core and roster that is intact at this very moment in time. And although I don't agree with the Knicks letting go of Tom Thibodeau, I can also applaud them for trying to push all their chips to the middle of the table. And although I don't believe that Mike Brown is ultimately going to be the coach that is going to win the Knicks a championship, this is still a damn good team, and Mike Brown is still a very good coach. And I do believe that in a weakened Eastern Conference that is not going to feature Jason Tatum, Damian Lillard, or Tyrese Halliburton this season, the Knicks are poised to make another deep postseason run, and I do think that this Knicks team is absolutely, undoubtedly one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. And let's talk about the way that this Knicks team has now came together this offseason. So first and foremost, I do want to just go ahead and go over some of the Knicks offseason transactions from the players that they've re-signed, that they've added to the roster, and some of the key veterans that they've lost. When you look at their re-signing, the only player that they gave out a new contract to this season was Mikal Bridges, who received a 4-year, $150 million contract. Bridges is now going to be under contract until the 2029-30 NBA season, and if I remember correctly, I do believe that Mikal Bridges was in the final year of his contract. I believe it was about a $24.6 million contract cap hit that was going to take into effect this upcoming season. I do think that was a very good contract. Obviously, Mikal Bridges has been a very solid and productive player since coming over from the Brooklyn Nets to the New York Knicks. And although I don't think that Mikal Bridges has necessarily lived up to what expectations were of him, he has still continued to show flashes throughout his time with the New York Knicks. And of course, he should be a steady piece in that rotation moving forward. So I can applaud the New York Knicks for that move. When you look at some of the players that the Knicks brought in this offseason, they brought in former Utah Jazz guard Jordan Clarkson to a 1-year, $3.6 million contract. Jordan Clarkson at this point in his career is maybe no longer that 6th man of the year candidate that we once saw that he was just a couple of seasons ago in Utah. But Jordan Clarkson is still a very productive scorer. He's obviously going to have the green light, I would imagine, in this Mike Brown system coming off of the bench. And I do think he's a perfect complementary piece to what the Knicks need as that other scoring punch alongside Deuce McBride coming off the bench. The Knicks also brought in former Philadelphia 76ers forward who decided to go to the Ops in Yabusele, coming over on a 2-year, $12 million contract. Yabusele, I believe, has a player option in the 2026-27 season. This was another solid pickup for the New York Knicks. Yabusele is a guy who can kind of put the ball on the deck, get downhill, and he's really just a force to be reckoned with, especially when he's going downhill. So I do like that signing as a low-risk, high-reward type of situation. That's really how I view Jordan Clark. But the Knicks, they did lose out on a handful of key veteran players. Now, depending on how impactful you would have thought that they would have been this year, I guess that's kind of up for personal interpretation. But they did lose out on guys like Landry Shamet, Cameron Payne, PJ Tucker, DeLon Wright, and Precious Achiuwa, someone who had came over from, the Toronto Raptors in that trade back in 2023 when they had also acquired OG Anunoby and they had traded away players like RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. So now when you take a look at how this Knicks roster has continued to shake up, let's go ahead and go through their depth chart just very briefly. When you look at their starting five, I think that this is a top 2 starting five in the Eastern Conference. I think that you can make an argument that they have a better starting five than the Cleveland Cavaliers, but that was also the same Cavaliers team that boasted the #1 offense in the NBA last season. Taking a look at what New York is going to throw out there on the floor, it's going to be the same starting five from last season. Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Karl Anthony Towns. Now off the bench, you're going to get a little bit more thin with your depth because you have a ton of salary dedicated to that starting five. Off the bench, you're going to have Jordan Clarkson, Yabusele, Mitchell Robinson, Deuce McBride, and I guess for what it's worth, you're also going to have Tyler Kolek. Just want to take a moment to say, if you are appreciating this type of work and coverage from me, the best and easiest way to support me is by liking, commenting, and subscribing down below. It's free and it helps me and the channel out tremendously. My goal is to get this channel up to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the calendar year, and if you guys want more exclusive content from me outside of just here on YouTube, you guys can go ahead and follow me on my socials. The links to all of them will be in the description down below. But thank you guys again, and let's go ahead and get back to today's video. When you take a look at that starting five, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, two guys who are obviously the bona fide centerpieces of this organization and of this franchise. Jalen Brunson has obviously continued to emerge as one of the top players in the game since leaving the Dallas Mavericks and coming to the New York Knicks. Same thing for Karl Anthony Towns. I thought that was a win-win trade for both organizations, getting rid of Julius Randle, who obviously seems a lot more comfortable and had a resurgence in his career with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And for Karl Anthony Towns, he got to play under Tom Thibodeau once again, obviously no longer anymore. And Karl Anthony Towns, I thought, was the perfect complementary stretch five big that the Knicks needed. And although he does have his defensive weaknesses, something that could tend to be an Achilles heel for this Knicks team, especially in the postseason, Karl Anthony Towns, more often than not, provides a ton more on the floor than he is at times as sometimes a negative asset defensively speaking. Josh Hart is obviously a Swiss Army knife, a fan favorite, and I just absolutely love the way that he approaches the game. Definitely one of my favorite players in the entirety of the NBA. OG Anunoby played exceptionally well last year for the Knicks when he was healthy. I think he was banged up with some injuries, if memory serves me correctly. But OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart, you've got a very solid starting five of rotational players alongside Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. I think that goes without being said. And then, like I said, off the bench, guys like Deuce McBride and Jordan Clarkson, those guys are going to be your scoring threats, guys that you hope can come in and just have that green light and just alleviate some of that scoring pressure off of guys like Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. Yabusele, I already talked about. And then Mitchell Robinson. I do think that Mitchell Robinson, when he's on the floor and he's healthy, because we all know he's dealt with a litany of injuries, he's a very impactful center. Obviously, just the fact that defensively he has that prowess, he really just deteriorates guys from coming inside. And of course, he can swat a lot of shots back. I don't know why that's so difficult to say, but you understand what I'm saying when it comes to Mitchell Robinson. I think that he's a very high-level impact player in his limited minutes out there on the floor. I like Mitchell Robinson, especially next to Karl Anthony Towns when they decide to go double bigs. And here's a fun fact that I actually found out about that New York Knicks starting five last season. That five of Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Karl Anthony Towns played 940 minutes together last season. That was more than any other five-man lineup in the NBA last season. Coming in at number 2 was the Minnesota Timberwolves starting lineup that had played 714 minutes together. That means that the Knicks had 226 more minutes than the next starting five, and they were very effective once again because they obviously played a ton of minutes together. They had that chemistry and that continuity, and that's one of the best five-man lineups that you could throw out there in the NBA right now. The only five-man lineups that posted a better offensive rating than that Knicks starting five last season were the Boston Celtics, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Denver Nuggets, and the Detroit Pistons, because the Knicks boasted a 117.7 offensive rating with that starting five last year. That just goes to show you that is who Tom Thibodeau is. He's going to play those guys. We know those guys are going to play 40-plus minutes a night together, especially primarily on the floor together, so that number does not surprise me at all. Now, in this portion of the video, I do want to talk about the coaching change just very briefly about Mike Brown and Tom Thibodeau, and then at the very end of this video, I'm going to give my final thoughts about the way that I view this Knicks team this upcoming season, where I think they stack up in the Eastern Conference, and really what I predict. Now, getting to the coaching aspect of things, let me just touch on Tom Thibodeau really quickly. I don't think that Tom Thibodeau was going to be the coach that was going to win them an NBA championship, but considering the fact that Tom Thibodeau changed the culture for the New York Knicks, and Tom Thibodeau took this Knicks organization to the Eastern Conference Finals, yeah, they ultimately fell short of the Indiana Pacers, but he got them there. He was knocking on the door of an NBA Finals appearance this upcoming season. And I think he deserved one more year and one more opportunity with this core and with this roster to really have another opportunity to run it back. And they decided to move in a different direction. And like I said, I can understand why Leon Rose in this organization wanted to pivot away from Tom Thibodeau. But I thought that Tom Thibodeau was a man who commanded the locker room, got his players to buy into him. I do believe that he is a player's coach first, and Tom Thibodeau is just a great guy. He's a little soft-spoken, but he's a funny guy, and I think the Knicks fans and just people that have been around the Knicks organization really embrace what Tom Thibodeau was doing. I do think he did get cut short just a little bit, but on the fact of Mike Brown now being the head coach, I don't think that Mike Brown is also going to be the coach that is going to lead the New York Knicks to an NBA championship. We all know 20 years ago how successful he was with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. We all know how extremely successful he was as a defensive-minded coach underneath Steve Kerr as an assistant for the Golden State Warriors. And then he was a former coach of the year in his first year with the Sacramento Kings back in 2022-23, led them to the postseason with a 48 win total season as a number 3 seed in the Western Conference in his first year with Sacramento. Mike Brown is a very good coach. I don't think that he's a great coach. Mike Brown also has a tendency for calling his players out publicly, and that's something that I think can sometimes rub players the wrong way, especially the younger generation. And Mike Brown just has more X's and O's. I will definitely give him that. He's definitely going to get more out of this offense than maybe Tom Thibodeau was able to do. And Mike Brown still encourages his star players to play on the defensive side of the ball. He still wants his players to have that defensive, mindset at the forefront of their mentality. And I can respect that. But I just don't think that the track record that we've seen of Mike Brown has essentially resembled what the Knicks would want for a coach that wants to make a championship push, but only time will continue to tell. I do think that Sacramento did not give Mike Brown a fair opportunity after Mike Brown had really changed that franchise. The Kings are one of the worst ran organizations in basketball, and that is saying something comparatively to a ton of other organizations out there that have not been ran properly and effectively. Mike Brown, in simplest ways, is a very good coach. I don't think he's a great coach, but now time will tell with this revamped roster how he's going to perform. And now giving my final thoughts about where I think this Knicks team is going to end up this season. I do think that they're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals once again this year. I don't think that they're going to be a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference in the regular season because I don't think that there's going to be as much pressure for this organization to try to play all of their players and to try to get a top 1 or 2 seed in the regular season, because they know that their ultimate goal is not about accomplishing what they want to do in the regular season. It's about what they want to do in the postseason. I have the Knicks coming in at 4th place in the Eastern Conference behind Orlando, Atlanta, and Cleveland in no particular order. I think those teams in the regular season are going to be better. I think that the Knicks are going to match up once again with the Detroit Pistons in a first-round playoff series matchup, which I think will be great because I think the Pistons got a lot better this offseason. And I do think that the Knicks are going to make the Eastern Conference Finals as a team that has been battle-tested, a team that has a ton of star power, and a team that has built up a ton of that chemistry and continuity over the years, especially with their core in place. So I don't think that the Knicks are going to beat the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that would be a terrific series to see Donovan Mitchell at Madison Square Garden in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I do think the Knicks ultimately end up losing that series in 7 on the road at Rocket Mortgage Arena, or whatever it's called now, for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this is all assuming health. I do think that Karl Anthony Towns' defensive liabilities are ultimately going to be the Achilles heel for this Knicks team, especially when switching 1 through 5 on the perimeter. Now, Karl Anthony Towns isn't the only issue. When it comes to the New York Knicks, I think that there have been times where they get stagnant, offensively speaking. Hopefully that's where Mike Brown can kind of come in and really get these guys playing their best and utilizing the skill sets of everybody around Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. I think that they're the second best team in the Eastern Conference this year, assuming health, but I like the Cavs just slightly more. But Knicks fans and NBA fans, I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. What do you guys make about the New York Knicks this upcoming season? How do you think that Mike Brown is going to be able to turn this roster around? And I also want to know from your guys' perspective, what is your biggest hot take this upcoming season? Doesn't even have to be Knicks related. I want to make a video reacting to all of your guys' NBA hot takes and make a compilation video. So please go ahead and do that down below. Make sure you guys also go ahead and drop me a hot take. But thank you guys once again for sticking around throughout today's video and all of your guys' continuous support. It doesn't go unnoticed. If you guys want more exclusive content from me outside of just here on YouTube, you guys can go ahead and follow me on my socials. But thank you guys once again, and as always, I'll catch y'all on the next one. LFGM.